What's up, folks? Sean the Average Angler coming at you with another great video, and today we're going to touch on something that is, I think just about anybody that does it really loves it if you have this kind of stuff around you. So if you're new to the channel, you like this kind of content, hit that subscribe button down there below. Become part of the Average Angler community where we do stuff like this almost daily. All right, so today we're going to talk about a very fun, universal, and well, you can do it just about anywhere. And it's called flipping and pitching. Okay, don't bail off the channel because you don't got a bunch of heavy grass and all that kind of stuff. Flipping and pitching can be done around a number of different things. Boy, I got some wrinkles in this shirt, huh? Yeah, my wife's married. She doesn't care anymore. I have 5 flip and pitching combinations here. All are fairly similar in that if you only had one, you could do all of the things with it. And I'll probably tell you which one. I think I've got 2 that you can do just about all aspects of it. However, they're not necessarily ideal for everything. Reason being is the actions are maybe a shade different between rods, but the main thing is some are a little bit heavier than others, even though, well, they all have different ratings for the most part, to be honest with you. From rod manufacturer to rod manufacturer, rod ratings don't mean a whole lot. It kind of goes along with their own rod ratings. So if you know one, then you probably know the others in their lineup. But you can go to another manufacturer and guess what? It's not exactly the same as the other one. There is no prescribed standard per se. I don't really know where to start, so let's just start with this one, okay? And I've got, I think, 4 brands here, 3 brands, 5 rods. Okay. So we're going to start with this one. This is an Irod Gen 3 764C heavy light flip and junk rod. This rod, I really like this rod. It's quite universal to me, if you will, okay? And it's just what it says in the title, light flip and junk rod. Now, light flip, pitch, that's pretty easy to understand, right? Light flipping, pitching, those kinds of things. So I will say I have fished this up to 1 ounce, which is what the rating says, 12 to 20 pound test. That 1 ounce, if you are punching close range, it's fine. It will get the job done. Not really ideal for punching in my mind. This is more of a cover target oriented flipping and pitching rod. Okay, I do have 18-pound shooter on this rod with a Daiwa Tatula 7.3 to 1 Tatula SV, a fast moderate, which in Irod, it's got a pretty good bend in it. I'm going to attempt to show you, but what I can tell you about bends and rods is we can do all these tests all we want, bend tests. They seem to load a lot different when it's a fish. Okay, as you can see, we bend a little further down into the rod. Okay, so it's really good for flipping and pitching to cover, like, for instance, tules, wood, targets around docks, pitching up to the bank under shade from trees where we're hitting those types of targets, dirtier water. And I'd really put the optimal weight for pitching on this rod somewhere around that ½ ounce range, okay? Like I said, it'll handle up to 1 ounce. That's the sweet spot, ½ ounce and under. This rod is fairly light. It was the second lightest rod of the bunch, but hey, a lot of these are rigged up with weights. Some of them 1½ ounce weights. There's a 1 ounce weight, there's a ½ ounce weight, and then there's no weight. So I will tell you that all of these rods were between 12.7 and 15 ounces, okay? All in all, that's pretty good. I think when I started flipping, my first Bass Pro Shops flipping stick probably weighed more than 15 ounces, just the rod. So rods have come a long ways. So let's just do the iRods first, because I actually have 3 of those. Then we'll get to the other ones. Okay, next we have an Irod Quercus. It's going to sound similar in that it is a 764C again, heavy. However, this rod is a wee bit different, and there you'll see it's rigged up with a 1/2 ounce weight on it. Now, this one, the ratings say 3/16 to 3/4, which I find a little interesting because this is a wild card power finesse flipping rod, okay? It's actually a faster action than that other one, which means essentially that the backbone in the rod locks up much sooner. And I'm going to say it's a good probably 2 eyes, 1 to 2 eyes prior to that other 764. So a little bit quicker backbone on this one. Very nice feeling rod in hand. Do we dare do balance points? Is this right there? Okay, and I think most flipping rods you're going to find are probably just a shade to the tip side, because most of the time we should be having our rods down. We're flipping, the tip is down, we're doing the pendulum aspect of it, the tip is down. That other Irod back just about 1/2 inch from the Quercus, and I believe they are the same reels on both. So interesting little thing there. Now, one thing I will attribute that difference in the tip. First of all, one's a fast moderate. The other thing is each one of these Irods is a step up in model. So the Gen 3 to the Corkus, the next model up, and then the next one we have here is the Air, flipping and pitching. So this one doesn't say finesse. This is a 775 Irod Air, heavy, 1/2 to 2 ounce. So it's 1 inch longer, and aside from it being longer, again, just a little bit faster than the other ones. So this is the point I wanted to make about that. And let's check the balance point real quick here, just for shits and giggles and Sean's curiosity. It is right on that hook keeper. And this will be interesting to see as we go through other brands, if we find the same thing or if it's a little different. Longer rods typically more difficult to balance. All right, so the point I wanted to make about these 3 rods and that the difference in action is just a shade different. This is a much higher quality graphite in the rod than the Corkus, and the Corkus than the Air or the Gen 3. So with that, you get what I like to call crisper. Okay, you get a little bit more feel, a little more sensitive, but it's also a crisper blank, which to me is just higher quality. You get crisper, you feel better. It's also more reactive to the way it was specified, meant to be. And I do want to say that for the most part, I checked all of these, and even though some are heavies, the Irods are all heavies, if you want an extra heavy, I think the only thing to get other than a swim bait, well, Bubs, that flipping stick said extra heavy, as does this one, which is a Shimano Expride. Okay, this one I got a couple weeks ago after I got the frog rod. My local tackle shop had it on display in their shop, and it was the old price. And I said, "Are you honoring?" And she said, "If that price is on it, then that's what it is." And I was like, "Oh, Jesus, now I need to buy it." I got another flipping stick. This is an X-Pride 7.6 extra heavy. So it kind of looks like the balance point of every rod here is pretty close to the same thing, within that much. Okay, the X-Pride is where I'm going to go, or excuse me, that 775, and the last one is one that I will punch with. This X-Pride is one that I will probably punch with, but this will be a lighter punch. Look at the bend here on it. Okay, and again, I'd say that's right there in the fast range. Just like the Irod, or the Irod Air 775, that upper echelon graphite, much like an Expride's graphite, you're going to be a little crisper, you're going to get a little bit better feel, and in the action, you also got a little quicker lockup point getting into that backbone. As I mentioned, all of these rod combos are pretty similar. The next one's the heaviest one, but in all fairness, it's 3 inches longer too. Oh, and there's 1.5 ounces weight on it. So it's really not to say that this rod is a lot heavier. But this last one is a Powell 795, 7'9", mag medium heavy, fast action, 1/2 to 3 ounce. Says swimmers, punch, flip, and wake baits. Okay, I can go along with that. Balance point going to be, again, right on that hook keeper. Okay, seems pretty standard for the flipping sticks, punch rods, whatever you want to call them. Again, the longer rods, it just seems to work out that way. Really, the only difference I'll say in this rod compared to the others is it's a little bit longer and the ratings are different. Mag medium heavy. I don't really know. It says fast action. Now here's the thing I'm going to show you. Okay, this rod is much more moderate than those other ones. Now, number one, in the graphite, we're giving up a little bit as far as the grade of graphite. Not to say this isn't a good rod. Quite honestly, I'd be happy with any one of these. Any one of these can do the job. Now, if you're lighter flipping and that kind of stuff, that Gen 3 is really tough to beat because, quite honest, it's a fairly light rod. It's somewhat towards parabolic when you actually load up a fish on it. So it gives you a lot of fish fighting power and forgiveness, which can be a crucial thing depending on what you're flipping and pitching in. And most of the time, if we're punching in heavy cover, we want something that has some bend. Now, again, I did say that rod's not for heavy cover. It's more for your toolies, bull rushes, whatever you guys call them, that kind of thing, around wood, around targets. Not technically a punch rod, although, like I said, I've punched with it with lighter weights. And I would definitely do it in certain situations, like if we're talking isolated clumps. Much different story than punching big mats. The 7.9 Powell Endurance, which is actually a very good priced rod, I fished for a long time. I really like the Powell Endurance. I used to punch with a 8-footer, and then my buddy that lives on the Delta and is sponsored by Powell, he told me he uses a 795, and he's caught so many fish over 10 pounds punching. I'm like, hey, who's to argue with him? And the nice thing is, you got 3 inches shorter rod, and you still have enough power. Well, when you're fishing all day, those longer rods will start to wear on you slowly but surely, right? Especially when you got that weight hanging out off the end of that tip, it just wears on your wrist, your forearm throughout the day. So that 795 would be a really good one all around, okay? All around. To do a little bit of everything. The two that I'm really going to pick are going to be the Expride 7.6 Extra Heavy. It's a nice light rod blank, feels good in the hand, little bit, just a shade shorter. It's still good for flipping and pitching, and we're going to get to that in a minute because I've got something else I just want to add to the puzzle. And the other one's going to be, you guessed it, that Irod Air 775. For similar reasons, we have the higher modulus graphite, more sensitive, little easier to work all day, depending on the reel you got on it. This is another thing. I got a Shimano Bantam on it. These things are pretty much an anchor, but they are solid as all get out. Flipping and pitching, you want to be able to pendulum that bait out there nice and easy. We'll get to, okay, so if you're flipping and pitching, but maybe it's closer quarters, maybe it's not a major thing for you. The Expride 7.3 extra heavy frog rod. And again, here we go with ratings, extra heavy. That extra heavy in the Expride line was very, very similar to the heavy in the Irod line. Like I said, ratings can be all over the place from company to company. You really need to get a rod in hand, and it's really hard because the best way to tell how it loads up is with a fish on the end of it, okay? You can have your buddy pull it, you can do the little floor test. It's just not the same as hooking up a fish. That 7.3 is a phenomenal rod for doing flipping and pitching, and quite honestly, if I'm flipping or pitching, I pitch almost 90% of the time. Look, flipping is using a fixed amount of line where you pull it out to the side, flip it out there, and feed the line. That is flipping. In today's day and age, it seems to be everybody refers to flipping when they're pitching the bait out there, right? Push the bar down on your thumb bar on your reel, pitch it out there. That is pitching. Yet so many people refer to it as flipping, which I don't really care, but I just feel it necessary to distinguish. There is a difference. So I almost always am pitching, okay? Whether it's 10 feet away, 12 feet away, shit, maybe it's 30 feet away at times. Hey, if you only got one target back there, why drag the boat or kayak all the way back to that target when you can pitch to it from 30 feet and hit that target? That's kind of the point of pitching. These bigger rods are great if you are doing a lot of it. Now, a lot of these double in other things. That Powell and the other two, especially that Gen 3 Irod, can double for a lot of things. Swim baits, the flag glide baits, any 6 or 7 inch, most of your 6 or 7 inch hard glides, top waters, treble hook baits. So that Gen 3 is much more parabolic than some of the others. So there is a lot of crossover in a lot of these, and the Powell, very similar to that of the Dobbin 795, so it doubles in those same baits as well. So you really need to decide what kind of fishing you like to do or what your fishing's like where you live to decide which type of rod you're going to get. And if you're like me and you live in Northern California with the Delta and Berryessa and Clear Lake around, it's a target-rich environment. There's days where I will go out with 7 or 8 flipping rods on the boat when I'm really dialed into that flipping type bite, flipping, punching, you know, that kind of stuff. Different weights, different baits. Sometimes you can't have enough of them. If you got any questions, drop them down there in the comments. I'm Sean, the Average Angler. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.